Maya Lin. Maya Lin is a world-renowned architect and is hailed as one of the most important public artists of the century. Lin was born October 5th, 1959, and she is from Chinese descent. Her parents fled China before the communist takeover in 1949 and settled in Athens, Ohio, where they became professors at the University of Ohio. It wasn't all that difficult to see why Lin turned out to be such a gifted artist, since her mother wrote poetry and taught literature, while her father was a ceramic artist. She, however, did not attend the University of Ohio and instead attended Yale, where she attained her bachelor's degree. She is known most for her controversial NAMS Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C., which she designed during her senior year. She used the landscape of the site primarily by creating the memorial with a V-shaped wall of stones, lowered below sea level, which she etched the 58,000 dead soldiers' names into. She uses the Earth's landscape to create her pieces in the majority of her work, not only the Veterans Memorial, by using technological methods to study and visualize the natural world and then translating that info to her environmental installations. However, does not only make architectural works but studio artwork as well. Lin is an environmentalist, explaining why she has consistently used the environment as her primary subject when creating her pieces. She advocates sustainable energy use, raises awareness to habitat loss, and served as a member of board for the NRDC National Resource Defense Council. She has won numerous amounts of prizes and awards, including the Presidential Design Award, the Mayor's Award for Arts and Cultures, a National Endowment for the Artist Award, the Williams A. Bernardi Resident in Architecture Fellowship from the American Academy in Rome, the award in architecture from the American Academy of Arts and Letters, an AIA Honor Award, the Finn Jewell Prize, and as well honorary doctorates from a number of educational institutions such as Yale, Harvard, Williams, and Smith College. Just this year, she was honored the Presidential Medal of Freedom by Barack Obama. But she does not only fiddle with art pieces, memorials, and sculptures. Lin has also filmed a documentary, Maya Lin, A Stronger, Clear Vision, which she won the Oscar for the Best Documentary of the Year in 1994, and wrote and published a handful of books.
Social and historical context of the Vietnam War includes millions dying.
The civil rights and anti-war movement both played very large roles in the Vietnam War. The war started on November 1st, 1955. It was the first American war to be televised. Couple that with the gory photographs taken by journalists, it was the first time showing that young Americans were being murdered on foreign soil against an enemy that did not directly threaten the United States. It turned much of the American public against the war, though it was the year 1965 when the draft rate increased from 3,000 young men to 33,000 in just 1 month. Riots were seen on every college campus, while thousands of young men that were drafted fled to Canada and other countries to escape military service. They were known as the Draft Dodgers. Class also played a large role in what was happening back at home on U.S. soil. Wealthy families were often granted draft deferments in exchange for costly favors, while poor lower-class people were forced into the war. This caused a hatred of the upper class that still persists to this day. After the war ended and the U.S. did not win, people saw the memorial as a slap to the face, which is when President George W. Bush said, "This is not a war memorial, but a memorial to those who served in the war."
Sorry. Maya Lin, the designer, admits the wall doesn't glorify the war, which many Americans consider the wall as unworthy of the sacrifice it was required. However, she believes that it succeeds in glorifying the human lives lost in the battle. Some were even upset that Maya Lin, being an Asian American, could have created a national memorial to the devastating Southeast Asian War. Tom Carhart, a Pentagon civil lawyer and Vietnam veteran, believed the memorial was an insult to the veterans and that the wall was a black-wash of shame and sorrow. He also believed that the black wall that Maya Lin's piece of art was considered as black wall as a universal color of sorrow and dishonor, hidden in the hole as if in shame. However, Lin saw it as a wound in the earth that is slowly healing. Just as Lin stated, I imagine taking a knife and cutting into the earth, opening it up, and initial violence and pain that in time would heal. Lin decided to choose black granite in order to make the sacrifice reflect and and peaceful. So when people look directly at the wall, people will see their own reflection in it. Just as she states, the mirrored effect would double the size of the park, creating two worlds, one we are a part of and one we cannot enter. The two sides walls of the Veterans Memorial was positioned so that one wall pointed to the Lincoln Memorial and the other wall pointed to the Washington Monument, representing a strong symbol of unity for the country. Lin is said to believe the wall demonstrates as a form and allows the names to become the object as pure and reflect the surface that would allow visitors to see themselves with the names. Maya Lin's Vietnam Veterans Memorial finds itself caught between politics and critics in the art community. Perhaps people don't see what Maya Lin sees about the admiration and respect she had over the fallen warriors. Maya Lin wanted to evoke tears in the viewers to act as a vehicle for veterans to begin to heal from their experience. People claimed Maya Lin was too young to understand the effects of war. Some people even accused her for being racist for being descendant of a Chinese.
In July 1980, President Jimmy Carter approved legislation to create a Vietnam War memorial. A brief design competition was held, and on May 1st, 1981, a Yale student named Maya Lin was picked as the winner. This is where the controversy began. The design of the memorial was picked partly because of its minimalism and sophistication, and with trust that this would help heal a hurting nation in the aftermath of a deadly war. Many felt the memorial fell short of honoring the dead. Many maintain that a sinking black wall with names of the dead printed on the side was an insult. The memorial felt more like a tribute to some terrible disaster or accident and not to a valiantly fought war. There was nothing to the simple black wall that suggested the people died for any purpose. The black wall felt shameful and degrading, like something you'd want to hide and forget. The Vietnam War was felt to be a pointless and meaningless war, and this memorial only solidified those feelings. In short, the Vietnam Wall Memorial was a reminder to many that their loved ones died for no purpose. Some felt that no memorial was better than one that was inconspicuous and meaningless. Additionally, some felt the designer of the memorial, Maya Lin, was unqualified to take on such a project. This is because of her young age of 21 years and the fact that she was only 4 years old when the first casualties of the war were happening. In defense of the accusations against the Vietnam Wall Memorial, officials claim that the wall honors the dead without glorifying the war. They maintain that the point of the memorial was not to focus on the war and politics, but rather the people that fought in it and gave their lives. In response to the complaints of the minimalism of the memorial, it was argued that it was simple so it could be open to interpretation because many had different views on the Vietnam War and if it should have been fought in the first place. The design was picked because of the Vietnam Wall encourages solidarity and healing.
Maya Lin originally designed it for a class she was taking at Yale. The initial idea of a memorial had come from a notice posted at the school announcing a competition for a Vietnam Veterans Memorial. The class, which was on a funeral architecture, had spent the semester studying how people through the built form express their attitudes towards death. As a class, they thought the memorial was a appropriate design idea for their program. So They adopted it as their final design project. When the professor saw the idea that Maya Lin and the class had, he said to Maya, "If I had a brother who died in that war, I would never want to visit this memorial." Maya Lin felt memorials should be honest about the reality of war, about the loss of life in war, and about remembering those who served and especially those who died. But on a personal level, she wanted to focus on the nature of accepting and coming to terms with a love and accepting and coming to terms with a loved one's death.